Excited to be joined by Dr. Julie Evans, Chief Researcher and CEO of Project Tomorrow. Julie, welcome to BbWorld.
Hey, Phil, it's great to be here again at BbWorld.
So glad to have you back. So let's jump into these questions. How has the pandemic shifted the perceptions around student agency, and what does it mean for K-12 learners?
Well, it's really interesting. As a result of the pandemic, we obviously had that sudden shift to remote learning. In many cases, that was digitally facilitated. And so what was really interesting is that it put students, in many cases, in the driver's seat about their own education. They had to take responsibility for their learning. And in fact, the kids loved it. 51% of middle school and high school students told us this year that they really enjoyed being in control of the learning process. Unfortunately, only about a third of teachers said that they were comfortable with giving students that type of choice. So we've got a little bit of work to do in terms of helping teachers understand how to explicitly facilitate student agency and student ownership in the learning process.
Absolutely. And those numbers are surprising. Tell me, Julie, is there anything else that surprised you over the last year?
Well, obviously, Phil, the big thing that surprised me was the flexibility, particularly on the part of our nation's teachers in terms of adopting technology and adapting to these ever-changing dynamics that they were facing. And so my hat is off, quite literally, to all of the teachers in terms of the great work that they did. But the other thing that has continued to surprise me is it wasn't just about the technology use, it was also about the valuation. So how we started to think about digital tools and resources as being more than engagement tools, actually helping students develop skills. I think that's something that we're going to see continue on way after we are back to what some folks are calling more traditional education.
That's actually a perfect segue into my next question. So beyond that, how do you think K-12 education looked different as a result of the pandemic?
Well, it's funny you asked me that, Phil. I actually think education looks different right now because of everything that we've gone through. But if I think even a little bit further out into the future, I think one of the things that has been so significant has been the blending of what happens in a child's learning life at home with what's happening with their learning life in school. So just by virtue of having to do remote learning, teachers are telling me they have a much greater appreciation of the challenges facing their students, and they know how to better meet the needs of their students. So we've actually had almost an awakening around all the fabulous ways that teachers and students can be better connected, have stronger relationships, and we know that impacts learning.
Julie, you mentioned this earlier in our conversation. I want to come back to it. It's about student agency. How does technology encourage student ownership of the learning process?
Well, there's so many different examples, Phil. I'm going to give you one because I think it'll be really interesting for our friends here at BbWorld this year. We've been tracking over time how students want to have communications with their teachers, how they want to build relationship with their teachers. We know that students highly value those type of relationships. So what's been really interesting is to see how schools, districts, and teachers are embracing the idea of two-way communications with their students. So not just sending an email or posting something up to a portal, but actually embracing messaging apps that have two-way communications and text messaging with their students. That puts the opportunity for students to be able to not only develop stronger relationships, but if they have a question about homework, I don't understand how you did that math problem today in class, or I've got a problem with getting that homework done. They actually have a way to have ongoing communications. It's the way we're all communicating now, so it makes sense that we put that type of student agency and ownership in the hands of the students, facilitated by technology.
Awesome. Building stronger relationships through technology. Dr. Julie Evans, thanks for joining us here.